it's a tactic, and the assumption that like folks that engage in that tactic are not also engaging in other activities, other times, in other, and using other tactics at other times is not true. So one of the points she makes is she was involved during the Olympics in Vancouver in what was called, I think it was called Dignity Village. It was like a homeless encampment protesting the Olympics. And a lot of the anarchist agitators were also hanging out there, like bringing food, like working security, like so that the cops didn't shut the place down. And so it's not that it's like.
But I guess just don't see like you can do that though. You can bring food and be generous and stuff, but you don't have to be like. Because I've seen for instance, the Black Bloc used to stop people from entering a building or stop people from attending an event or something. And I mean that's just insane. Like that's just I don't see how that's justifiable. It's like you can. You should just feed the hungry or whatever, or support whoever. But I just don't see how it's justifiable to Black Bloc people from speaking or entering a building.
I guess that's just a definition of what you think is okay. If you think never stopping anyone from doing anything.
Or from speaking, for instance.
If someone is coming to what would be the word, to out trans people so they can be attacked, to incite violence against other people?
But I guess that's kind of subjective though. I mean, it's because what would you say is what would you say, because you don't actually know what someone's going to say until they say it. I mean,
well, if someone has a pattern of doing the same thing over and over again, at a certain point,
I'm doing what though? Speaking?
Of outing and doing things that end up causing harm to people.
Speaking in ways that that then lead to people, individuals or populations being targeted.
But who gets to decide what kind of speech is acceptable and what kind of speech isn't? Though I mean, that's the question. You can put all kinds of.
I mean, if you believe in the Constitution, then you've got some guidelines. But if you reject the state and the Constitution, then...
So I believe in... I'm a free speech absolutist. I believe in the Constitution. I think any free speech is...
Wait, those are two different things, though.
Well, not exactly.
Absolutist and the Constitution are two different things.
Okay, well, I believe that any speech is acceptable. I don't believe in the concept of hate speech. I don't believe in the concept of any speech that should be outlawed or illegal or blocked.
Do you think
there's a difference between outlawing speech, though, and people taking direct action?
Huh?
There's a difference between speech being outlawed and people choosing to engage in direct action.
But I think there's a kind of blurry line there, because then you kind of say it's okay when citizens do it, but it's not okay if the government does it. So
that's a very important distinction.
Yep.
Well, yeah, but I mean,
it's absolutely an important distinction.
But what's the line though? I mean, I actually don't think it's that important of a distinction, because you're saying that the government can't do it, but anybody else can. So if the Black Bloc stops somebody from speaking at an event, that's justifiable, but a government body isn't. I don't see the difference between they're both blocking somebody from speaking. What can you explain? Well, I mean, what's the difference? What would be the difference?
Do you not see a distinction between the state and people?
I believe that the government, ideally the government is the people. So if you,
that wouldn't really be.
Right, but ideally, right. I understand that there is a distinction between a state actor and a citizen actor, but I don't see in the distinction between people are just oh well, it's not the state doing it, we're just doing it, so it's okay then. So it's but I don't think it's okay. I would say that that's not an acceptable reason to say it's okay, because you say okay, so yeah, if the government doing it is bad, I agree, and I also think it's bad if you do it. I don't want you or the government saying what I can say and what I can't say. I don't think it matters whether it's the government or not.
Do you mind if I?
Does that make sense?
Yeah, go ahead.
Add to the conversation?
Sure, yeah.
I won't force my way in, but if you guys don't mind.
Oh, no, that was cool.
Well, the way I look at it, there's a big distinction between the government. The government is all-powerful, right? We're supposed to be, they're up here and we're down here, right? So there is a difference between us going back and forth with each other and them forcing things upon us. And the right to free speech is a law. It's a legislative thing. It's a law thing. It has nothing to do with people. When people are like, "Oh, you're taking away my free speech," it's like a citizen can't do that. Only the government can do that.
I think a citizen can, though. I don't think that the government awards you free speech.
And then the other point about that is when you're talking about two sides, where one side's ideal is freedom for everybody. You know, to put it simply, one side's ideal is freedom for everybody, and the other side's ideal is to force certain values on the greater society. Then that whole like citizens can't tell other citizens what to say or stop other citizens from saying anything only benefits the one side. It doesn't benefit the side whose ideals are, which, I say most black people are, left wing or, are anarchists.
Or communists,
right? So that ideal is somewhere on the spectrum of total liberation, whereas the other ideal is the forcing of values, which you might think are good values, on other people. So it only benefits that one side.
But I would say the communists are forcing their value. If you're blocking somebody from speaking because you don't agree with what they have to say, and you're calling it like hate speech or something, trying to justify it, that's forcing your values on someone.
But both sides do that.
Different.
Both sides.
I'm not arguing that both sides can't or aren't capable of doing that. I'm just saying that I don't see how one is necessarily different than the other. Like this is
my point with that is both sides do it, but it only really benefits the one side because the other side is for total liberation. The other side is for everybody doing and saying whatever they.
You think like black communists are for total liberation?
Yeah, I think that's the end result. I think if you have to take away somebody's freedom of having a rally for the end result of hatred not spreading in your country.
Then you don't have freedom. Then it's not freedom.
I'm saying it's an end result.
But then it's not freedom. Then so then you don't have total freedom. So freedom of speech means the freedom to have hate speech. You have the freedom to be hateful. I mean that's part of freedom. Even if you disagree with it or you dislike it, that's part of being free is being free to hate.
Yeah, it's also part of being free is also
you can't just pick and choose.
You can't pick and choose. It's also being free to stop somebody from saying something.
Are you enjoying filming this?
Yeah.
Okay. It's also being free. It's also being free to stop somebody.
It's just a documentary.
He's out. It's also being free to stop somebody from having a rally. You know what I'm saying? Like when you say total freedom, where do you draw?
No, but wait, freedom to stop somebody.
No.
Why would you have that freedom to why would you have the freedom to stop somebody from doing something? That's infringing on their freedom to do something. That's not your freedom. Your freedom stops when your freedom to do things stops when you're stopping someone from doing things that don't hurt, that are not.
No.
If somebody wants to speak, they should be allowed to speak.
Right.
You don't have the right to just stop them from speaking. That's.
Why not? What if?
But speech doesn't come without consequences, right?
What do you mean though? That just seems like a euphemism. What's the consequence? You get to punch somebody who says something you don't like. That's their consequence. Is that justifiable? I've heard that a lot. I've heard that a lot. Speech doesn't come without consequences, but why? But does that mean that those consequences are justifiable? And does that mean that those consequences? Who is enforcing those consequences, and why?
Well, I would argue against the state enforcing those consequences. Absolutely. I don't want anyone being arrested.
Okay, sure, and I agree. And I don't think that the state should enforce anything like that either. Like for instance, when people have been getting police visits, in certain countries like Canada and stuff, for saying certain things online that they're not supposed to say, because there are a lot of countries that don't actually have free speech written into their codified.
Do you think people don't get police visits for saying certain things in this country?
Well, I'm sure that they do, and they might, and that's bad. And I agree. I think that's a terrible thing. People, any police visits that are. Anyone who is, anytime the government is stopping you from speaking, I believe that's a bad thing. But see, I just don't stop that there though. I would extend that to citizenship. I don't think that.
I don't believe in the concept of citizenship. And so
But
I'm
then
not
how can you make
necessarily.
a distinction between government and a citizen? Or what would you call that, I guess?
I would talk about individual humans acting, and sometimes when individuals act, there's going to be conflict. And
Sure.
I mean, there's going to be places where there's conflict, where that conflict may erupt into things that could be considered violence. And I'm not for violence.
Right. No, most people aren't. I mean,
But
I'm not
I
for violence.
recognize that it's a part of social interactions. Whether the state exists or we talk about freedom of speech or not, there's still violence inherent in all of our daily lives all the time.
Well, do you think that, I mean, I guess the biggest distinction is, see, I think violence, there is justifiable violence. There's such thing as justifiable violence when it's in retaliation to it, you know, when it's in self-defense, when it's in retaliation to violence. But I just don't see, where I have a problem is when people start to conflate speech with violence. And when they say that,
I do not think words are violence.
Okay.
I want to be really clear. Like, I do not believe that words are violence.
well, cool, I agree with you there. Yeah. Because some people do. I'm just saying.
No, and
yeah,
I've heard that, and
it's just,
I don't
it's
know. I
frightening
think
to
that,
me.
For me personally,
Right.
when I'm talking about violence, I want to be really clear that I'm talking about physical acts. And I think that, you know, like not words. Words can hurt.
Sure. Yeah,
Words
they
can
hurt your
cause
feelings, right.
words can cause lots of harm. And I don't think that, and I actually think that some words can lead to violence. Right?
I mean, yeah, there's many things that can lead on a path to violence, sure, but it's hard to. But my problem is that you can't really predict. Nobody can really predict or determine that.
I can pretty safely predict that if a white supremacist is advocating openly for killing people of color, queers, Jews, that that advocacy, there is an intended end result.
Sure, that's why we
fine.
do have things like it is illegal, like incitement to violence, so-called is illegal. You know, if you're telling somebody to hurt somebody else, that's not protected. And I can agree with that to some extent. Oh yeah, hey, good talking to you, man. I can agree with that to some extent. It's just it's a fuzzy line though. It's like, because the thing is that anybody can say anything they want. If somebody said, you know, go kill blacks or something like that, that doesn't mean that I'm going to go do that. And if I did, I would be the deranged individual, right? It wouldn't be the person who is saying it is not like controlling people on puppet strings, you know?
No,
So it's like
we're all individual agents
so everybody,
who are capable of making decisions.
So everybody has a choice to make. So if somebody says something,
I don't think I disagree with the argument that you can just say things, that anything that you say is not going to have consequences. I mean, like, and that doesn't just extend to that sort of thing, right? Like, I've said things and there's been consequences in my life, right? Like,
yeah,
you know, like,
I get it, yeah, I get it, but you don't think that any kind of speech should be illegal, though, right? Right, so
because I don't believe in legality or illegality.
Okay.
So no, I don't.
So lots of real bad. I mean, I guess it's just who gets to be the arbiter of what is right speech and what is wrong speech. You know, it's like, because
ultimately I would say that that's going to be based on the. I mean, like, there's no ultimate arbiter. It's going to be situational. It's going to be based on who is the community that's present, that's being impacted. And I don't say, frankly, things like this all started to talk about, like, the black bloc. And, like the black bloc's a tactic. It's one that has been very effective at times. It's one that's been ineffective at times. I don't really care one way or the other. I carry a zine about it because I think a lot of people say, oh, well, they're outside agitators, they're doing this thing, they're bad, you know, and it's like, no, it's like, it's a little more complicated than that.
Well, yeah, and that's why I support your freedom of speech to have all this literature, and I love the fact that anyone can read both sides or any sides of any argument.
But it's also, I mean,
that way. So no. It's just I am glad though that you don't think that certain because you realize there are a lot of people who subscribe to a lot of this stuff that do believe that there are certain kinds of speech that aren't acceptable. They're so unacceptable that they should be either outlawed or they should be.
I don't think they should be outlawed.
Or I guess
think they should be shut the fuck down.
Well.
But I don't think they should be outlawed.
But again, then all it comes down to is who gets to decide what gets shut down and what doesn't. Though.
Sure, and it's messy and it's complicated.
Yeah,
and
I would say that I would just say that nobody has that authority. Nobody. I would never elect anyone to tell for me.
Would you ever elect anyone?
I would never say that anyone has
the right.
Do you
vote?
Huh?
Do you vote?
I vote. Yeah. But
okay, well,
I would never say that anyone has. I would never say that anyone has the right to tell me what I can and can't say and what I can and can't hear or what I can and can't think. And if someone's going to cause violence against me and try to justify it because they don't want to hear what I have to say, I don't think that's right. And I don't think anyone has the right to say that they're right to cause violence against me just because they don't like what I have to hear. So, they don't want to hear what I have to say. So, I mean, it's just, again, it just comes down to who gets to decide what's the right speech and what's the wrong speech. And like I said, it's complicated. I don't think it's complicated. I think no one does. I would just say that no one has that right. No one has the authority to do that.
I mean, that assumes that we live in a world where our actions have no effect on other people, while words are not violence, right? Like I don't conflate those two things.
Right.
Like our choices around speech, our choices around our actions, like what we say, what we don't say, how, like all of that does have real world consequences. Does have
I understand that, but it's like but when you
we don't exist in a bubble. Like we don't exist in like some like.
But again, though, when you're talking about consequences, you're talking about a person taking time out of their day to make those consequences a reality. It's like, so it's like if someone says something that someone else doesn't want to hear.
I'm not even talking about that, though. Like,
well, yeah, but consequences, though, I mean...
I'm not saying consequences in, like, air quote consequences.
Well, yeah, but what's the consequence if you go up, if you walk around town and you say something inflammatory, the consequence is what? You get punched or something?
I don't know. I mean, maybe if someone wants to punch you, I suppose so.
But is that person justified in doing that? I mean,
I don't know that it is.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. Is like you're right. There's consequences, but that doesn't mean the consequences are justified. That's all I'm saying. It's like somebody could give you a consequence, by attacking you for something that they don't want to hear, but like it doesn't mean that they're right in doing so.
Doesn't necessarily mean they're wrong in doing so either.
I would say that violence against any speech is wrong. Yeah.
Well, and we have a difference of opinion.
Sure, that's fine. So you think that there is some kind of speech? There are some kinds of speech that it's justifiable to use violence against? Because, I mean, that would be like what the state would do if the state came in and it was against the kind of speech. They would use violence. They'd say you're either going to jail or you're going to be hurt.
I mean, I would not advocate for state violence ever.
Right, but you'd advocate for regular violence.
In some situations, I might advocate for regular violence.
But how is non-state violence less bad than state violence, I guess?
Because we're all operating from a place of sort of the same starting position, I would say.
And trying not to let the state have a monopoly on violence.
Yeah.
Well, sure.
How much are is it the cover price?
It is a reasonable facsimile of. So I would say this is anywhere from 18 to 20.
I got